Welcome to Law Chat with Girija, my entrepreneur friends. I'm Girija Patel, and I'm a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister, a businesswoman, a lawyer, and an entrepreneur, just like you. I believe in the power of storytelling and mentorship through stories. Whether 6 months in or 20 years in their journey, entrepreneurs have impactful experiences to share, which are full of mistakes and full of victories. And my goal is to highlight those and to celebrate the diverse narratives and perspectives in the world of entrepreneurship, which inevitably provides motivation, encouragement, and inspiration to our community and to our own journeys. So Law Chat's purpose is not just to share the expected conversations about their businesses and journey, but also I want to share and dive deep into their details, get nosy, get personal, and learn from their pivotal journey and their mistakes, and also, again, their victories. So I'm here to use those moments to inspire and to motivate you on your own journey. And of course, we can't run away from the law. After all, this is Law Chat with Girija. So let's dive in. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited for today's Law Chat episode. Actually, I'm beyond myself because our guest today is amazing. Hetal Vasavada, founder and owner of Milk and Cardamom Sweets. Her craft in baking has gained a fan following that swear by each recipe she posts, including me. If you don't already follow her on Instagram, you might have seen her on Masterchef Season 6 or featured in the New York Times, Food 52, and The Kitchen. She's an author, owner of a new online bakery, and among all of those accolades, she's also a mother to a beautiful daughter and a wife, and really enjoying life in the Bay Area, San Francisco. So Hetal's love and passion for her craft radiates in everything that I've seen her do, because I do follow her on Instagram kind of religiously. So I just can't wait to talk to her and hear her story. And Hetal, thank you so much for being here today with me, and welcome to Law Chat.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I am so excited. Like when I first got your, yes, I'm coming, I was just like beyond myself. I don't know, but it was just, I'm just so honored that you're here, you're talking to me and, telling me about your entrepreneurship journey, because really like we learn so much from other people's stories as well. And I know I gave an introduction to you. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
No, I mean, that was an amazing intro. I wish I could take you everywhere with me to give my elevator pitch for me.
Yeah.
I'm so bad at it. I'm like, hi, I'm Hetal. I bake sometimes and take photos.
Oh, no. No. Sometimes it's like not an accurate description of what you do. I feel like you have taken some very traditional South Asian dishes and desserts and really made that a fusion and have really just reframed the mindset of even the Indian person, right? Like I don't love Indian desserts because I find them to be too sweet, but your recipes and, the things that you're sharing are just out of this world. They're really amazing. So no, it's not just some recipes.
Definitely the biochemist in me is very weird about accuracy and precision. So when I write recipes, I'm all about being able to recreate them because like I want it to be exactly how I made it the first time around. So I get very almost like obsessive about it.
Yeah, and I think that's so interesting that you actually are able to use your biochemistry. It's so cool that you can actually take that, extract information, and apply it in a very intentional manner to cooking.
Oh yeah, like I definitely utilize, you know how in chem class you start learning about conversions and like grams and micrograms and all those kind of things. It's like the first intro to chem course.
Right.
And I use that to this day. I'm like, who would have guessed I use that?
Yeah. Things that I said to myself, I'm never going to use this in my life. Why am I learning it? That was like, that's what you're using every day.
Mathematics all the time. People are like, how do I convert a 9-inch round cake pan recipe to a 9 by 13 pan recipe? And I'm like, okay, you're going to take the area of this pan and the area of that pan. You're going to multiply it by this ingredient. They're like, what?
Oh my, you could like actually teach a class in like some culinary school for that.
Yeah, I actually been trying to I've been begging my husband to make a recipe conversion calculator for my website so that you could just plug in like what the recipe is and like what cake pan size or like the serving amount you're trying to make, and it'll
Mm-hmm.
just automatically convert everything for you.
Oh my, that is so cool. And that
That
would
would
be a
be,
game changer.
yeah, because right now there's a lot of websites that tell you what the formula is, but let's
Mm-hmm.
be real, a lot of people don't
They're not
like, they
doing
look
it.
at it and they're like,
No,
they
they're
think
not
it's
doing it.
like, oh, 9 by 9. If I double that, I can put it in a 18 by 18. I'm like, no, no, no. 9 by 9. If you double that, that goes in a 9 by 13. So like the math
Yeah.
doesn't usually work
That
out.
is so fun. So I've never even thought about that because I bake, but I'm not like a baker, like in that sense. So if it says round, I'm like, whatever. And I just put it in the square. Like I don't even think twice about whether it's the same area or whether it's going to rise the same way. I'm just like, it'll work. It'll figure
It'll
itself
be fine.
out.
A lot of
I
people
love
do that.
that. That is so funny. So tell us, how did you start? Like, where did you start from? Where did it all begin? Where did this passion for food begin?
So I grew up in Jersey with a massive joint family. My mom, all her sisters lived with us at one point or another. My dad and his brothers and their wives and their kids lived with us at some point or another. So my house was kind of like the transition house for a lot of families. And I mean, it's
Hmm.
not small. My dad's got like six brothers and two sisters.
Yeah,
My mom's got like six sisters and a brother.
yeah,
Like, it's a
yeah.
lot of us. It's
So
a
I
lot.
think that generation was like that. My mom is one of nine. My dad is one of five as well. So it's a lot. I get the whole big family.
So, like, as you know, with a family like that, any sort of meal, especially if you're living together, every meal is a production,
Right,
right?
right.
Like, I mean, we had the typical, like, we're Gujarati, so we did dal bhat, shak rotli every night
Hmm. Hmm.
without question. So, like, we needed someone to make all the rotli, we needed someone to make all the dal, and, someone to set up the rice. And, like, at a young age, my mom had me, trying to keep me out of trouble. She bought me, like, a baby patli and velan, like a little area like it's like a little rolling pin and like wooden board that I can
Yeah.
roll out roti on.
So just for our listeners, dal bhat shak is exactly what?
Dal is dal like lentils.
Lentils.
Bhat is rice. Shak is any sort of vegetable. I mean, if you're non-veg, it can be meat too, but it's basically under the umbrella that non-POCs call curry, right? Like
Yeah.
a shak would be considered a curry to a non-Indian, but it
Yeah.
has a name. It's a shak. Shak
But
is
even with the Gujaratis, like, so I'm not Gujarati, I'm married to one. And so the funniest thing is, like, when we got married, everything was shak. And I'm like,
mhm,
dude, not everything can be shak. There has to be a label. Like, there is potatoes. We're from North India, so near New Delhi.
uh-huh,
And so we don't say shak, we say sabzi, but then it'll be like
uh-huh.
aloo ki sabzi, like
Yeah.
potato sabzi.
Yeah, we have our little descriptions, but it's very like, Gatianu shak,
Yeah,
Gaju and
yeah,
Gatianu shak,
yeah.
Batekanu shak. So shak is basically any sort of mixture of
Mm.
masala and veggies and sometimes meat if you're non-veg, because there are parts of Gujarat that do
Yeah.
eat meat. And then you have rotli, which is like our typical unleavened flatbread, which is in Gujarat we make it like very, very thin
Hmm.
um, compared to a lot of other areas.
Yeah,
But it's 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 a lot of work. It's definitely not
it
an easy
is.
meal to make. But I started off prepping veggies, like cutting off the tips of like guar or like green beans or
Hmm.
long beans or whatever, and then slowly moved my way up towards the shock. Shock is like expertise level because
It is.
that's the main part of the meal, right?
I also think
Uh,
getting that roti or the bread
yeah,
round is also expert level. It's kind of like, it takes
I know.
many, many, many attempts to get that thing round.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah.
I mean, I even struggle with it even now, and I've made a lot of rotis in my
Yeah.
life, like a lot. Because when I was in high school, it was my job. I grew up with two working parents, so I was a latchkey kid. So my mom would come home around like 6, 7 p.m. So my job was to like come home, prep the veggies for the shak, and then make the dough for the rotli and let it rest. And then by the time my mom got home, that would be ready. And then put the pressure cooker on with the
Wow.
dal.
Yeah.
Like that was my job. And then feed my sister whatever I could like scrounge together. Um,
Wow. That's awesome.
which more often than not consisted of pita bread, ghee, and peanut butter,
Yeah.
or Doritos nachos in the microwave. But
They all
yeah,
make up
yeah.
beautiful memories.
And then as I got to college, my orgo professor told me that if I could bake, I would pass lab. And I really wanted to pass organic chemistry
Yeah.
because that was like, at the time, I was like very much considering going down the organic chemistry route because I really, really enjoyed it. So I started baking from scratch in my dorm just to
More
like,
power to you for enjoying organic chemistry.
I,
All
I
my
think I
pre-med
very
friends took
much,
that.
I loved it. I love the lab aspect of it a lot because it's very much about accuracy, precision, and like it's very much like recipe writing. Sometimes it works. You'll do the same exact thing 2 times in a row, and one
Hmm.
time it'll work, and next time it won't work. And then you have
Hmm.
to like then problem solve and think about what could have gone wrong. Was it the temperature of the lab? Did the magnetic spinner that I used, was that different? Did it have something on it? Like you have to really be creative in your problem solving to understand what might have gone wrong. And that's the same
Right.
kind of thing with recipe writing, right? Like
Yeah.
what went wrong? Okay, let me figure this out. And I really enjoy that aspect of like recipe writing in general. But I started baking from scratch. I started with box mix initially, and then I like grew and was like making cakes from scratch and then cookies from scratch. And then I moved to California. Like I lived in Philly for a while for school, worked as a analytical chemist for a while, hated it. It was just lonely because it was a lab
Yeah.
with just me in it.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a very lonely lab. Plus, the temperature of the lab had to be like under 60 degrees for our mass spec to work
Hmm.
properly. So I ran this machine called HPLC. So it's high pressure liquid chromatography. But I did on hydroxychloroquine, by the way, of all things. That's what I did research on for 2 years.
Oh, wow. Who would have thought?
I was like, who would have guessed that any of
Who
this
would
would
have
be
thought?
helpful?
That's a whole nother topic for a
Yeah.
whole nother
I
day.
just thought that was so funny. I'm like, wow, I haven't heard that word in so long.
I know. And now
Um,
everybody's throwing it out there like they're an expert. And meanwhile, I'm like, how do you pronounce this properly?
I just thought it was I was like, wow, okay, interesting. But I really hated being alone in the lab. It was a lot of work and it was cold and it just like I couldn't do it. So I
Yeah.
left and I worked in like healthcare for a long time. And I moved out to San Francisco as a healthcare consultant. And I really miss my mom's like cooking,
Hmm.
especially like sweets and whatnot. So she would like we'd sit over like hangouts or video chat and she'd like walk me through certain recipes. And then slowly I started being able to like master them and like work them into a texture I liked, like I like besan ki
Yeah.
burfi. I love the flavors, but I hate when they're coarse. Like,
Mm.
there's a
No, there's a
couple
difference. Yeah.
and I don't like it and I like it smooth.
Yeah.
I want it extremely smooth. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make this with like super fine besan and make it like really, really like melt in your mouth type of texture.
Hmm.
Or like, ooh, this would taste good with chocolate, things
Hmm.
like that. And
Yeah.
I just started slowly experimenting with my desserts, adding more of the Indian flavors in and the flavors of like my childhood and really a lot of Indian American kids' childhood, which I
Yeah.
didn't realize until like post Masterchef, to be honest.
Hmm.
I just like didn't realize like how many people a lot of the desserts and the flavors that I combine relate to. Like,
Yeah.
and it kind of hits the same spots as like Christina Tosi from Milk Bar does. I
Hmm.
mean, she hits like nostalgic flavors for like non-desis, like funfetti and
Yeah.
butter pie and like
Yeah. Yeah.
and like
Like, I don't know what that was.
that's her whole thing. She has like a like yeah, exactly. I'm like I didn't grow up with any of that. Like even chocolate chip cookies, like the closest thing to a homemade chocolate chip cookie we had was like heating up a Chips Ahoy in the microwave so it'd be a little warm. Like I'm gonna do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
like
so
it was
funny.
it was like and eggs weren't allowed in my house. My family
Hmm.
didn't eat eggs growing up. So like trying to figure out like how to
Hmm.
then experiment and make things eggless. It just I just never really got too much into baking at home as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I was very much into chocolate though. I used to do a lot of chocolate making though.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, essentially I moved out here, started experimenting more, ended up on Masterchef.
Which
Um,
we will definitely talk about that. That is so cool.
and then when I came off, I wanted to do this cookbook really badly, but I had to wait 3 years so that my contract with Masterchef ran out
Are
and
you
then put it
serious?
out. Yeah. They make you sign your life away. They basically own the rights to your image, the ability to take 10 to 15%, it's their discretion, of your income, if it's income coming off of the food. So, like, if I did a cookbook during those 3 years, they could essentially
Mm-hmm.
make a decision to take 15% of whatever money I
Mm-hmm.
make.
Mm-hmm.
Or they could just straight up say, no, you can't do that. Like, they also had the ability to yay or nay any of your
Wow.
work or business ideas. I did talk to a couple lawyers at the time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I was like, how far can they take this? And they're like, well, they can't prevent you from making a living,
Yeah.
right? So I didn't know that. So I was like, oh, okay. So then I started making sure that like any business I did was like a high value project. So if they try to say no, I could go back and be like, well, you're preventing me from making an income and you can't do that legally.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's smart. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt this awesome conversation, but I have to stop and talk with you about the number one thing I'm asked about by entrepreneurs: contracts. They're vital to any business relationship and to protect your business. But I also know that entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting up, money is tight. But I would never want you to compromise on a strong legal foundation. So enter yourcontractbuddy.com, a website created by me with contract templates created and drafted by me and fellow industry partners. They're ready to use and easy to plug in immediately, and they are not restricted to any specific state. So yourcontractbuddy.com is sponsoring this episode, and you and your listener can get 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. Yes, you heard me right. 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. And now, back to our awesome conversation.
So pop-ups and stuff, like little pop-ups that I wanted to do, they said no to a couple of them because it was like I wanted to do them with one startup and they had just signed a contract with another startup that's similar, and it would be like a business conflict for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't do that, but
That's incredible. And I mean, I definitely want to touch on that later on as well. Like that's crazy talk. But then once you finally got out of that, you were able to write your
yeah.
book and create a book from, like, and it's called Milk and Cardamom,
Yep.
right? Yeah,
Yep.
that's amazing. So I just want to rewind a little bit and talk a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more about your childhood and growing up. And I know, like, you didn't have a lot of baking happening during that time. And there was
Yeah.
more Indian food, and as we call it very lovingly, desi. So anybody from
Mm-hmm.
South Asia is desi. But just to kind of like talk about it, I know all those flavors and those ingredients have definitely influenced what you are doing today. And
Oh
so
yeah.
your heritage, your culture, how did that impact your overall business and what you are doing today?
So I think initially when I first started, like just early on blogging, I wanted to capture a super large audience. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like writing any random recipes, really, none of it really made any sense. Now looking back at it, I'm like, who was I even writing for? Who was my audience?
Yeah.
Um, but I've been able to like kind of share my cooking background and my like Indian American experience and realize like that is my target audience in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Is I am my own target audience.
Mm-hmm.
Other people like me, and I strive to create dishes that invoke these type of memories that I had, and I know that hundreds of thousands of other Indian American kids did too.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, what I've realized, and this was like literally by pure accident, is it's also kind of helped me grow beyond just the Indian diaspora, in the sense that there's a lot of pastry people or bakers out there that are non-POC that have never utilized half these techniques. They've never toasted, flowers on the stove with like a fat
Mm-hmm.
to make something with it. Like, to them this is something new, and they get excited about it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, like, a lot of these things are familiar to them. Like a bundt cake is familiar to them. Maybe gulab jamun might not be,
Mm-hmm.
but it seems like it's something familiar that they could do and enjoy.
Right.
And then the other half is, us being Indian American, as we mix into the culture, there's a lot more of us not marrying desis, like other
Mm-hmm.
desis.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed, and I've gotten a lot of messages from people who've married, someone that isn't Indian, that will make these desserts at like Thanksgiving or Christmas because it celebrates both halves of the families.
Right.
Like
Right.
to their Desi parents, this is familiar, but then to like, their partner's parents,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I've had the, cake before, cookies before. It's nothing seems like too new. Like it's both comforting to both, right?
What a great target market. I didn't even think about that. Like your ideal client being the, mixed relationships or as, however you want to call it. But
Yeah.
that's so true because I think the first time I actually ever had one of your recipe desserts was at a Thanksgiving event, like in our family.
It, I love that. Like, because naturally people bake for other people. It's an altruistic
Hmm.
move. I would say like 90% of the time people are baking for someone else as a gift or as
Hmm.
something
Hmm.
to do at a party, right? So I love seeing like people making my desserts for Diwali or Eid or Thanksgiving, like grandma's birthdays. Like I
Yeah.
love seeing like little cute nannies with my cake. It's just so adorable and it brings
Oh,
my
it's so
heart so
cute.
much joy.
Yeah.
Um, so it's kind of like it's very much my heritage is very much influenced the desserts, not just growing up desi and like in with all the Indian culture,
Hmm.
especially in New Jersey where you're like surrounded, but also having that American background and
Yeah.
having those like very quintessential Indian American moments, like going to Patel Brothers with your parents and like literally like begging for a kulfi so that they can sit there for 2 hours and chat with auntie and pick like the best looking dindora or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's a lot. Like there's a lot of very specific Indian American experiences
Yeah.
that I really like hitting on.
And that's so beautiful because it's you're highlighting them, but in a way where it's you're wrapping a lot of warmth around it and you're wrapping a lot of nostalgic memories around it rather than looking at it in a bad way, but looking at it in a way where these are beautiful memories and this is
Mhm.
what life was. Let's just embrace it and let's move forward
Exactly.
with it and integrate it into our future. And I just love that. I think even the recipes that you have are such beautiful fusions and representing all different sides of the line, whether you're Indian or not. And so it truly is amazing. And I know that you had said earlier that you started baking in college. So why did you
Mhm.
start baking in college? What was happening during that time that you're like, let me start
Mm.
baking? And
So part of it was being in organic chemistry class and like being told I could pass, but the other part was my parents both lost their jobs my
Mhm.
freshman year. Background on my family, my dad has a third grade education, my mom has a 10th grade education. My dad worked as a child laborer cutting diamonds in Surat and paid for his brothers to come to the US, who then sponsored him. But I was the first person to go to college in my family,
That's
really go
incredible.
beyond like to graduate high school, really. So when they lost their jobs, they gave me an option of like, you can go to college and pay for it yourself
Hmm.
and support us a little, or you come back home and like work at a store or something and help us. So I decided to stay in college and I
Yeah.
started cooking out of my dorm room and selling food. I used to bake like Valentine's Day cakes for like people and their girlfriends or boyfriends. I did little like, plates of food, sold
Mhm.
those. So it was something that like I could do to make income. Like it was my only valuable skill set I had at that time that I knew
And
I
I
could monetize.
But you were so young back then, right? And I think like anybody who is 18, 19 and have that acumen to not only figure it out because you're like, there is no option to leave college, first of all. And then second of all, you're like, okay, let me find a solution. And then your solution is entrepreneurship. At the end of the day,
Mhm.
that's what you did. You found your skill set and you're like, I can do this. And I think it's so incredible how you merged your organic chemistry and your love for baking and you made it happen. Now, whether you sustained it or not after college is a different story, but at that time, your entrepreneurship, in my opinion, started then. Like your journey started
Mhm.
then almost. Like you got a taste of it.
Yeah, I definitely did. I even started a thing called Ride with Pride, where I'd pick up people for $20 from wherever they were in Philly
Oh my God.
for
You were Uber
so they
before it
would.
began.
I know my husband says that. He's like, and you didn't monetize.
Oh,
I was like 20 years old. I didn't know any better. I was just like, yeah, give me $20. I'll pick you up so you don't have to do a walk of shame. Like,
oh my God, I love that.
and,
No.
it, and I used to pick people up from like wherever they needed to be in the mornings. And
Oh my God, and the
yeah,
name, Ride with Pride, because you don't have to do the walk of shame.
the marketing genius.
That is though. I mean, that's genius. I'm sure people at UT, I went to
Yeah.
University of Texas at Austin.
Mhm.
I'm sure people could have used that service there.
Yeah. See, our school used to provide van service where they would pick you up like within a certain radius of the school and drop you off, or you could take like the UPenn bus system for free,
Right.
but they canceled it. So I was like, I'm
Oh,
gonna hop on this train. Like,
that's amazing
I
though.
have a car, we can make this happen. Yeah, it was. I hustled. I hustled hard. I worked as like a front of house person for like a small pizza joint, aka I like stocked the beer and ran the cash register and served people when they came.
Yeah, that's
Like
true.
waitress, cashier, stock person, all of that in one. So I worked a lot of jobs, and that made me like really learn time management very quick,
Mm-hmm.
and that has now become like invaluable as like an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur with multiple, like I've
Hats, because you do
diversified.
a lot of
Yeah,
things. There's a lot
exactly.
under your umbrella. And
Yeah,
so, and then I feel like the biggest job is being a mom. I mean, I'm a mom of two kids,
yeah.
and especially right now, at home learning, I'm like, time management is key. And not
Oh
that
my
I'm winning
God.
at it all the time, but when I do win at it, it's a huge win. So,
Oh yeah. You feel so good. You're like, I'm gonna go and buy myself a bag of Doritos to enjoy by myself on the couch because I got everything I wanted done.
oh my, yeah,
It
iced
was a
coffee.
win.
Woohoo. Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Absolutely. So fast forward a little bit, and I know like after you graduated from college, you were doing biochemistry, right, at that time?
So I graduated college and I worked as an analytical chemist for 2 years while I was in grad school. So I
Mm-hmm.
did a master's in biomedical sciences and organizational leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I did a couple odd jobs in between. I like worked for the ME for a little bit because I had a minor in forensic toxicology. I was like, maybe I do this. I was just trying to figure out like what my path is and what I wanted
Yeah,
to do, like
yeah.
what aspect of science I wanted to be in. And then, the overall pressure of what, parents wanting you to be in healthcare kind of took over. And I was like, fine, I'll go to grad school
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and, maybe do healthcare research, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then while I was in grad school, to pay for grad school, I was working as a medical biller. And then that led me to a job at Columbia University Medical Center as a reporting analyst,
Oh,
where I did all like the billing type of
okay.
work for the doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And then that led me to a healthcare consulting gig out here in San Francisco. So really, my
Incredible.
degree didn't lead me to any career that I had. It was all the jobs that I used to pay for the degree.
Yeah, yeah. But that's so cool though, because I feel like your story is so unique in the sense that you experienced so much in life at such a young age in life. And, you were able to dabble in your passion for baking also and for cooking, and then using your skills as a scientist and really making food art, but with like legitimate science behind it also, I
Mm-hmm.
think. I mean, when I cook, I'm not necessarily thinking of all the science behind it unless I'm trying to teach my kids science. But, like it's so neat that you're able to do that. So when you moved to California at that point, when did you actually transition into and completely pivot into baking and saying
Yeah.
bye to science in the traditional
20,
sense?
yeah, 2015. So about 2.5 years after moving here, I was miserable at my job. Oh God, it was a terrible company. There were like HR violations left and right for this company.
Yeah.
So my husband could see I was like absolutely miserable. So
Hmm.
he actually told me to quit.
Were you
And
guys married at that time?
yeah, we had just gotten married pretty much. And Yeah, it was like literally 5 months after we got married.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, quit. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. And he's like, just quit. You're so miserable. And I'd never been in a position where like not having a job was an option,
Right.
right? Like from 18 on, I like had to have a job to pay for my stuff and myself
Right.
and my loans. So I was like, I don't know. This gives me anxiety. He's like, just quit. He was on a rotation in Singapore at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, come stay with me in Singapore and you can think about what you want to do next. So I tried to actually start a cookie business after I got back. It's
From
called Bits and
Singapore
Bites.
or
Oh, from SF. So I spent like a month in Singapore,
right.
just kind of like really focusing on like what do I enjoy? What do I want to do next? How do I want to do it? I want to be in food, but I don't have a culinary degree. What are my options, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do I go to culinary school? What does that look like? If I start a business, what are the costs that come with that? And do I have the income or the funding to do it? How long would it be before I become profitable? You know, really like thinking about like, what are the options, right? Do I work for a food startup?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are they looking for in qualifications? Do I have them? So trying to figure that all out. And then what I settled on is I was going to start a cookie business and then also offset any loss with working as a consultant for healthcare startups. Cause like I knew I could make money on that because I had like multiple years of
Right.
experience, right? So I knew I could make a good income. So I started doing business development consulting for a couple of startups at the time that were in healthcare. And then I started working on my cookie business.
Yeah.
I pulled out my lab notebook. I started writing recipes. I started experimenting. Does organic eggs versus non-organic eggs really matter? Will this flour versus like this flour really work? Does a butter brand matter? Does like really narrowing down the recipe?
Mm-hmm.
And then I had like a test where I invited people in my condo. I lived in a really big condo at the time. I had like over 400 units. So I just put a thing like free cookies come by. I want your opinions.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
So I had like a test study group, focus group, I guess, who came and tried them and tell me to like punch up the flavors and like
Mm-hmm.
go deep. If I'm going to add cardamom, add a lot of cardamom. Because I was still
Uh,
thinking like, oh, I need to cater to the, you know, American palate.
right.
So I was holding off a lot and I was doing like very American flavors like peanut butter. And then I had a couple that were more Indian, like masala doodh.
Mm-hmm.
And the Indian cookies were the most popular ones.
Yeah.
And then I got anxiety and I didn't have the confidence to keep moving because
Mm-hmm.
your friends and family are always going to tell you your food is good. But I just didn't feel like I had the qualifications to start the business and be able to do it right.
Mm.
Right. I'm like, oh, why would anyone buy from me? Like at that point, I thought cost of customer acquisition would just be too much. So then Root told me to apply for Masterchef.
Right. So from baking cookies, you apply for Masterchef.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Did
Yep.
anything else happen in between that time?
We traveled for like 3 months.
Oh my God, I love
Um,
that.
we traveled for like 3 months
So
and
you
then,
just left
yeah,
the cookie business that you started or that you were about to
yeah.
start. So did you even start and sell or no?
I
Oh,
made it to that focus group and I chickened out.
oh my goodness. So I love that though. I love hearing that because I feel like that's not just you. It's not unique to you. A lot of entrepreneurs start and then stop midway, even though it's a great idea, even though they do have the skill set, they do have the competency, but they're just scared. And so the
Hmm.
limiting beliefs halt them and they're not able to move forward and move past
Hmm.
that. So
Yeah.
but what's very unique though here is that you like I can't do this, but I can do MasterChef. So that's like really
And no, that was like a forced apply. My husband's like, okay, so he like rationalized it to me this way. He's like, okay, so you're not confident that your cooking is good compared to other people. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, well, go on MasterChef and see how well you do compared to other amateur cooks.
so
And I was
I
like,
think that's so
ah,
that's like mind blowing because I don't know if I wouldn't do that, right? Like I wouldn't be like, let me go to MasterChef and figure myself out. It would be like, let me go to culinary school and figure myself out.
well, this way I was getting paid. This is a very like,
I love it.
so I like applied. I literally made it. I was the only person that made a dessert in my cohort. I just kept making it past every round. And I was just like, what is this? And it was like blowing my mind. And then even on the show, like I definitely had bouts of like imposter syndrome and confidence issues.
Mhm.
But once I got off the show, I definitely like gained a lot of confidence,
Yeah.
but not enough to start a business just yet. Because
Yeah.
again, the trolls come out, right? What I forgot was the trolls and the
Mm.
Reddit threads and the Twitter comments and
Mm.
people who feel like they know you all of a sudden because they saw you on TV for like, an hour a week.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
it was a lot of negativity, a lot of Indians saying I wasn't Indian enough, and a lot of Americans saying that I was too Indian.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it was very like exhausting to deal with. So I actually stopped cooking for a very long time, for like about 6 months,
Wow.
because it gave me a lot of anxiety.
And how
But
did you overcome all of that? How did you just say, you know what, trolls, you be trolls. I'm going to be Hetal and I'm going to do what I'm
oh,
amazing at.
I took a little bit from my husband. My husband would like stand up for me in Reddit threads and people would apologize.
Oh,
He definitely has this like I don't care attitude.
what a
So
great cheerleader. My gosh,
he's
you want him in
he's
your
a
corner.
yeah. And also like relying on the other MasterChef contestants. We all went through the same thing
Mhm.
emotionally, right?
Mhm.
So we just kind of had our own little group and we talked to each other about our feelings or like just call each other to check
Mhm.
on each other. But what I ended up doing is like I found out I was pregnant with Ilara literally the episode that I got kicked off on aired. I
Mhm.
found out I was pregnant that day.
Oh.
Yeah. Um, so I ended up getting hyperemesis gravidarum when I was pregnant, which is basically you're like vomiting like 9 to 15 times a day.
Oh wow.
Um, and you just have like intense motion sickness all the
Mm.
time.
Mm.
I had that for all 9 months of my pregnancy.
Oh.
So I took that time to take a break. Again, didn't cook for a while because I like literally couldn't. But I did throw myself into my like consulting. So I started consulting with a lot of food startups
Mhm.
and really focusing on like my social media game and working on photography and little things that I knew I could kind of stomach.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I built myself up from a consulting standpoint, right?
Mm.
Like working on my food photography, working on understanding social media. So I took like a social media course, a digital marketing course,
Mhm.
just kind of focusing on those things. So then when I came, like literally a month after I had Ilara, I felt so much better that I started going back to like writing blog posts and doing like
Awesome.
continuous posts, and I was just like back on track.
That's it.
But
That's great.
yeah, but those like 9 months I had of like experience, that led me to a lot of word of mouth work. So, there aren't that many recipe developers out there here in the Bay Area. So
Yeah.
like they're like, oh, you need one, here you go. Especially being in a place where there's a lot of food startups and it's
Yeah.
like all like techies and engineers who know nothing about food for
Yeah.
the most part. So like, it was very helpful for me. I was in the right place during the right time
Mhm.
and I was able to flourish. And then that got me into doing restaurant consulting and social media consulting and food photography and recipe writing and all that stuff for different brands. And I was able to build myself a very nice clientele through word of
Mhm.
mouth.
Mhm.
And then I decided to focus on myself last year. So I
And
was like,
it's just going upwards from there. And I think
yeah,
it's so incredible because I know you said that you didn't do anything for 9 months, partly because you were pregnant also, but then also because of your post MasterChef experience. And how did you get yourself out of the trenches? I know that, you were helping and here and there, but on a mindset level where,
hmm,
there's a lot of, I don't know about you, but I talk a lot to myself sometimes
me
because
too.
I have to really like reshift, refocus and get in, wear the blinders and kind of like move forward. So how did you do that? And what are some of the things that if there was someone that would come to you today and tell you, this is what I'm going through and basically your story, what would be the advice that you would give them?
Honestly, I think I've like always grown up hustling and like throwing myself into my work. And that's how I kind of got out of it because I knew that my clients enjoyed what I was giving them, like the
Mhm.
content I was creating for them. And that brought me a lot of joy and reminded me like of my capabilities. That and just like talking about it, with other people, talking about it with like another troll came out of the woodworks today with like my coworkers or,
Yeah.
or with my ex Masterchef friends, and just like,
Hmm.
you know, oh, this sounds terrible and probably isn't the best mental health advice, but I distracted myself until I got to a place where I was like,
Hmm.
in the long run, this doesn't matter.
Yeah. But I mean,
Yeah,
listening to your story, I think you didn't just distract yourself with playing games on your phone. You distracted
no.
yourself with, diving further into the art of cooking or into that realm that you were feeling comfortable in and really gaining more
Hmm.
experience. And then I also think you surrounded yourself with people who are your well-wishers, your support system, and who really were walking the same walk as you. And I think that's so important that we're
Yeah,
able to identify the trolls versus people who are really truly there to be our cheerleader. And
yeah.
so with all of that though, like at the end of the day, what is your anchor? Like when you fall down to your knees and you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. What is your anchor at that time?
Probably, I would say it's like two pieces. One is my husband, right? Like he's very much like, get up out of this, you'll be okay. I got you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he's that safety net. The other part would have to be like, I am one of those people that's like very internally very motivated to do things
Mm-hmm.
and get things done. I'm a get things done type of person. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like there are definitely days where I'm like, I don't want to do anything. I'm not going to get things done because
Yeah.
I'm frustrated. I take a break and I walk away
Yeah.
and I come back at it. I'm very like almost
Yeah.
dogged in that sense. And I would say a lot of it's just like one, my passion for cooking, but two, my motivation to also like kind of build a foundation for my daughter and like
Yeah.
a small little legacy for her.
Yeah.
Like I want her, when I'm long gone, to have these recipes so that if she ever feels like, I really miss mom's, cookies or whatever, she can make it exactly as I did.
Mm-hmm.
And like she can go to school and be like, yeah, that's my mom. She's like, there's definitely a sense of like wanting to leave a legacy for her
Mm-hmm.
and let her know that you can succeed in a career that's creative, because
Mm-hmm.
that's not something that's very much stressed in most families. Doesn't matter if you're like
No.
black,
Yeah.
brown, purple, white, like, a creative career is not something that most people really want their kids to do.
Yeah. And I think it's true, but I think the creative industry is really really gaining a lot of traction because a lot
Hmm.
of people are realizing that they find so much joy in their creative side. And so they really spend a lot more time in it. And I mean, just looking at you, there's just so many avenues that if you are a chef or if you are a baker and you love the joy of cooking, there's so many other avenues that you can participate in
Yeah,
that industry and not just be somebody on Food Network. Like, growing up, I
exactly.
love Food Network. I would always watch it. But then I always thought if you're a chef, that's your ultimate goal to be on Food Network or
Yeah,
something like
own a
that. I don't know.
restaurant. For
Yeah.
me, like everyone like on MasterChef was like, so you want to own a restaurant? I'm like, no, I have zero interest in owning a restaurant. I know what comes with that. I don't want it. And that blew their mind. They're like, what's your dream goal? I'm like, honestly, to like write recipes and be the person behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
That's so incredible. So now today, and what you're doing today, you just debuted a new bakery online, and I
yeah,
truly believe I think you're selling out every single time you post the menu
yeah,
and like the
yeah.
options that are available.
It's been kind of crazy. I like didn't expect that, to be honest, just
Yeah.
because I didn't realize they would go as fast as they do. What I did learn is like I am not able to meet the demand, so I'm like working on now like growing my business faster and trying to scale up, which has been a whole thing on its own, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, the fire under my butt is there has been like a lot of copycat bakers or bakeries that have come out,
Mhm.
and I'm like, you know what? If other businesses are making money off of my recipes, why wouldn't I make money off my own recipes? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's common sense to me.
That makes great sense. And I'm glad you talked about that. So let's talk a little bit about the legal side, Law Chat, of course. But so what are some legal things that you've actually encountered as you've
Yeah.
been developing your business and cultivating milk and cardamom?
Yeah. Obviously, the biggest thing is like, kind of copyright or like intellectual property type of things, or like for a long time, I thought like, whatever I made is something that I own, right? I created that. It's mine. And then what I realized after talking to a lawyer is that, yeah, I created it, but someone can totally take the same thing, take my recipe and sell it, and I can't do a thing about it. Food and, like you mentioned, fashion earlier, are two very wishy-washy areas of law. And there's not much protection for people out there, unfortunately. I had a lot of bakeries. Actually, I had one that was calling themselves the home of the original gulab jamun bundt cake. And I'm like, I created that. Like, it's like Dominique Ensel's cronut, right? Like, he created the cronut. That's his thing. It did not exist in the world until he created it.
Right.
And for the gulab jamun bundt cake, again, like, it did not exist in the world until I created it. That concept is something I made. I feel very protective of my recipes in that sense.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's my brand, right? Like,
So what have you done? What actions have you done? Legal actions have you done to protect your brand and to protect other trademarks that you're creating in your brand?
Yeah. So I trademarked gulab jamun bundt cake. I also trademarked milk and cardamom. I took some of my most popular recipes and registered them for copyright. Anything in my cookbook is already registered for copyright anyway, because it's a physical item. Exactly. So I think I didn't really realize how much law I would have to learn and understand, like, especially being a creative in the food industry. And now I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely need to protect myself because I put so much effort into creating these things. And I mean, in the end, the food world relies on ethics, and not everyone has the same level of ethics.
Right.
The only thing I can do is ask people to credit me kindly. And if they don't, unfortunately, there's nothing I can do other than maybe sending them a cease and desist on using the word gulab jamun bundt cake.
And you should, because you're trademarking it and you got to police those words.
Exactly. So they can call it something else. But like, I never wanted to be that person, right? Where, like, you know, you always hear about like, oh, this big business went after a small business they're having. And I'm like, now I get it. Like, you work so hard to create something, and to then see someone try to pass it off as their creativity or their work is very frustrating. And the thing is, like, in any other, I think, sector or industry other than food and fashion, you can't really pass off someone else's work as your own legally.
Well, I mean, I think, like, you know, it's photography. A lot of the, and in fact, the copyright, the copycat, what you're saying is actually very common across the board. It's not just for, you know, for the food world or even for fashion. It happens a lot, and it's a real problem. And I do believe that there's no shame in the game to say that this is mine, back off. Because at the end of the day, you have put so much effort into it. And you should be able to say, this is mine, and you're not going to benefit from it just by using the name. Because a lot of times people may not even say it's theirs, but they'll use those specific words and keywords to benefit from it in their business. And so, you know, you just have to be able to make sure that you're going to be policing it. And like, if you do see it, kind of just let people know this is mine and you can't use it unless I give you the right to use it.
I'm very lucky that a lot of my followers police it for me. And whenever they see it, they message me and they're like, hey, and they'll slide me in my DMs and send me like a link to someone that's selling the cake and isn't crediting me or whatever it may be. The only time I ever go after is if someone's making money on it. And then also saying that they created it. If it's just like a blogger, everyday blogger, I'll like say something, but like if they are going to argue and like be really nasty, I let it go because it's not worth it for me. They're not making money on it at that point. And depending on how big the blogger is, it doesn't make sense for me to like really spend my energy on that. But if it is a business that is making money, then I do say something because they are profiting off of my work.
That, and then also they're diluting your brand and or diluting that trademark, not the brand, but the trademark itself. And so if, you know, for example, gulab jamun bundt cake just becomes a normal generic name, your trademark's not worth anything anymore. And so you want to make, that's another reason why you have to police, and I say it in air quotations because there's no better way to say it, but it's like that's why you have to police your trademark, because you do want to protect your brand. And so that's
Exactly.
great. I'm so glad that you've actually done that and taken those actions, because sometimes people are scared to do it or they get overwhelmed by it. And at the end of the day, overwhelm and scare should not be part of the equation when you're trying to protect your
Yeah,
business. You're working
exactly.
hard for it. So that's
I
excellent.
know. I didn't want to, I was like, initially, I was like, do I want to spend the money? And then after a while, I was like, yes, I do. And
Yeah,
I
it's
did it
worth
through,
it.
I did it through LegalZoom. It was like much easier than I expected.
Yeah.
Um, so, and like they are very good. I mean, I just like didn't have a lawyer I could talk to at that moment. So I was like, whatever, I'll do it through LegalZoom. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everything's kind of been pretty good so far. They have lawyers I can talk to for free whenever I need to. That's like a part of the
Mm-hmm.
service.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I definitely after that whole experience of all these like home it wasn't just one bakery, it was at least 20 to 30 bakeries that are doing this.
Wow.
And
Wow.
then there are a couple of restaurants that had like literally my dessert on their menu without any credit. So
I
I would
also think
say
people
not a
just
week.
don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know any better.
No, I send them. So David Leibovitz, who's like a very renowned recipe writer, has this whole
Mm-hmm.
link on his website about recipe attribution and what
Mm-hmm.
the ethics are around it.
Love it.
Um,
Yeah.
and like when to say inspired by it or adapted by it or when to even just give credit. And I
Yeah.
usually send that because you're right. 90% of the time, people just don't know any better because they are unspoken rules of food blogging
Mm-hmm.
or like recipe writing in general. But the thing is, any good writer, when they're, presented with evidence of whatever, like something that was wrong in their writing, they will
Mm-hmm.
amend their article, right? They
Right.
amend the article with like, hey, spelled this name wrong, or this
Yeah.
person was not this job, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel like ethically, once you're presented with evidence, you should go back and fix it. But a lot of, I would say like maybe like 2 out of 10 people argue back and try to say like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's not your exact recipe. And like, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. You're
Did you
using my
create?
name. Yeah.
Yeah, you're using literally a concept that I created.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. I'm so
Yeah.
glad that you're serious about it and that you've actually taken steps to protect your business and your brand,
Mhm.
because I think that's the first step, is
Yeah.
that, taking that leap forward towards protecting it. So that's awesome.
Well,
And I,
that and like working legally, right? Like most of these bakeries at our home are illegal.
oh
You're
yeah.
not supposed to be baking out of your house and selling, especially during COVID,
Yeah.
right? Like I work out of a commercial kitchen. We have rules and code laws. Like we have to have a hairnet, have to have a mask, have to wash hands
Hmm.
every X amount of times. You have to wear gloves. You have to mop, sanitize multiple times throughout your baking process. Like I am a very big stickler for following the rules.
But that's
So
good though, because you're serious, right? You're
yeah,
taking your profession, you're taking your business, and you're giving it respect.
yeah,
And if you're giving it respect, then you are also expecting others to do the same. And I think
exactly.
a lot
Yeah.
of times people who do start a business in their home don't necessarily know the legalities of it all, because it's just easy to just start. And
Hmm.
later on is when people start gathering the, oh, I need to do this for law. Oh, I need to do this for accounting. Oh, I need to do this for this, right? So it's a very afterthought rather than a preemptive, let me just figure this out and get all my ducks in a row. And so that doesn't
Yeah.
happen right away.
No, yeah. I've learned that as I talk more openly about these things and like
Yeah.
running a legal bakery and, like creating these rules, a lot of people have come to like me with questions on like, well, how do I, legalize myself if I bake from home? What are my options? Or,
Mm-hmm.
how do I protect myself from
Mm.
other copycats, etc. So it's been really interesting to see that like it has sparked a little bit of a conversation within like the desi food community to
Yeah.
learn how to protect themselves, but also
Yeah.
like run their business in a kosher way.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me a little bit more about the food blogger community and the Desi food blogger community. Do you get pushback on the recipes you're creating or the route that you're taking for your business, or is it kind of like rah rah, yay yay type stuff?
It's definitely like cheerleaders for sure.
I love that. Yeah.
100%. A lot of cheerleading, a lot of support. Like our community is very small. Everyone kind of has interacted with everyone,
Mm-hmm.
but I definitely feel like I'm maybe one of a handful of people who do this full time.
Mm.
And take this seriously as a business. Because for a lot of people, like you mentioned, it's a hobby. It's something they do for fun. And this is not a hobby for me. This is how I make my livelihood.
Yeah.
So I do things a little bit more on the serious side. Like I am very much more like business oriented in that sense. But a lot of it has been a lot of cheerleading, a lot of hype. I mean, I'm selling out. I have people buying like not just buying one cake, but then coming back and buying from every single sale or supporting every one of my online classes. Like it's unbelievable how supportive the community is.
Yeah.
And like I'm lucky that I have fostered a very positive environment within my specific like milk and cardamom community. So I very much enjoy that. I know there's like other aspects of like the desi food blogging community that people could do without, which is like the drama, which is like you have like the beauty bloggers and their drama, and of course ours isn't going to be any less.
Yeah.
Calling people out for like I think everything can be solved through a private conversation, to be honest. But
Yeah.
people get called out for copying or like jumping on trends or not doing anything that's specific to them. And I think a lot of people, whenever I do like AMAs or ask me anything or anything like that, a lot of people want to know like, how do I branch out and not become just another desi food blogger that's like sharing their 100th recipe for, some sort of hariyari, tandoori, whatever item it may be, right?
Yeah.
Like there are lots of good bloggers who do that. I think anyone new that's coming in needs to understand that they need to create their own niche and be
Yeah.
more creative with their recipes, because I think there's been a huge insurgence of new Instagrammers that like one think they can grow really, really fast, and no one grows as fast. It took me 6 years to get to 50,000 followers. 6 years. It was not an overnight thing. It wasn't a year thing. It took me a very long time. And you have these new people that are jumping on that think they're going to get like 100,000 followers in a year, or are going to grow very fast by doing some like, I would say unethical hacks, like doing bots, like follow, unfollow bots,
No, yeah.
or like asking bigger bloggers to share their content without ever talking to them or like even following them. Like I would say most of my DMs lately have been like spam messages. So it's just basically people like sending me their posts. Just every single post, they'll just send it to me whenever they post it. And I'm like, why are you sending me this? Like, you're clogging up my DMs and I'm not finding like the people that I want to talk to. But that's a growth hack that some people are using. In the hopes that like someone bigger shares it so that they get followers. But I think people forget that like you can't get legitimacy from anyone else but yourself.
So true.
Like if I say your food's great, the thing is if someone goes there and makes their recipe and guess what, it doesn't work out because surprise, surprise, not everyone's a recipe writer overnight. I look bad, right? And you look bad.
Yeah.
I think over time, as you hone your experience, people will follow you because they'll naturally make your recipes or naturally find you as you post things out that are unique. Like there are a ton of small Instagrammers out there that make really cool, unique dishes that I have not seen anywhere else. And I'm so excited. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to share this. This is super cool.
Yeah.
But if you send me like the 10th masala puff recipe, I'm not doing it. Like I know 3 other bloggers that did it, and I trust them because I've tried their recipes because they've been here a lot longer than you. Right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's so true, though. I think a lot of people think that you might be a success on its own, but if once you get into social media, it's a whole other ball game. And I also think followers does not equate success. You need to have engagement with those followers. They need to be truly your tribe or your troop, your community where you can get engagement from. And that happens because you have to give back also. You have to be cultivating and you have to be fostering those relationships. And so I think it's so true what you're saying is that, I mean, I get the same thing. I get a lot of these random DMs and things, and it's just kind of like, I don't even know where to go with this, but like, okay.
Mhm.
So then,
Yeah, like I do answer every single DM if I can, as long as there's like, if it's like a normal emoji response, it's not much I can say, but I do like try to respond to everyone.
Mhm.
But I think it's just really, I've probably given this advice so many times. I'm like, don't consume as much Instagram if you plan on being an Instagram content creator, because what ends up happening is either consciously or subconsciously, you will be influenced to create a dish that's already existing out there,
Mm.
right? So
That's great advice.
like I consume enough Instagram to interact with my like my peers but also followers,
Hmm.
right? But I won't go on there when I want to start recipe writing. Or like if I once I do come up with the ideas, I'll go through and be like, did anyone else
Mm.
create this? Am I crazy? Did I see this elsewhere and not realize it? And if they
Hmm.
did, I'll credit them.
Yeah.
Or it's clearly inspired by them. I clearly saw it, right?
Yeah.
Which again, nothing takes away from your skill. Like crediting does not take away from your ability and skill, period.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. It just
And
shows that you have respect for other
exactly.
industry members. So,
Exactly. And people I just don't get under, I don't understand why people don't feel like it's okay, like don't want to credit.
well, I think it's
But
just about competition, right? And so I think the whole concept of community over competition needs to be also highlighted
oh
and
yeah.
spoken about and promoted. So I
Oh
think
yeah.
that kind of it comes down to something, those
Dude.
basic tenets of being on social media, because there's honestly, like, I feel like if you don't use community over competition, how are you going to rise in the sense of
Hmm.
there's so many people out there doing almost the same thing you are, or if not exactly the same thing you are.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, not just even like rising through Instagram, but also paycheck. Let's be real. If a brand reaches out to me, they're probably reaching out to a similar Instagrammer.
Mm-hmm.
The fact is, like, I've fostered a group where I like say, hey, so and so reached out to me. What do you guys plan on quoting them? So that we make
Mm-hmm.
sure that we do not get underpaid as content creators, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
if I know that someone got offered like $3,000 for something that they only offered me 1,000 for, I know I have room to negotiate,
Right,
right,
right.
and make more money.
Yeah,
So like
that's great. That's a
it's
great point also.
only in your best interest to become friends, genuinely become friends,
Mm-hmm.
and like create these type of groups where you kind of create your own coworkers and you advocate for each other. If I work with a brand that I know one of my fellow Instagrammers would be a great fit for, I'll tell them like, hey, by the way, go check out, Bullock from Chutney Life or Jill from Jillicious. Like they would fit this perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And I have other friends that a lot of these campaigns that I get on Instagram or even just brand like ambassadorships or whatever, some of them have come from other friends referring me. So I just pass
Mm-hmm.
it along, right? Like creating that community.
Right.
And that's like, it's only going to work out better for you and everyone else. But the moment you start being competitive about everything,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, it's not a good look. I think there's like two types of people. There's the type of people who try to gain followers through negativity, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
like people will always like bond over hatred. So they'll call someone out publicly or they'll be really nasty about something or like, you know, just be very negative and then try to like, round up people under like to behind them to like support them in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then there's the other group that like, oh, like let me support all these other people, and because you support all these people, they support you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Instagram has enough negativity. There's no point in trying
Yeah.
to gain more followers over that. Like,
No, I think, gaining followers in the most organic way and just being true to yourself and authentic.
mhm.
Those words are so overused, but I do mean them for the purpose of what they're meant to
Yeah,
be. And that is just kind of playing your game, right? Keeping those blinders on and doing what you do best. And I feel like
exactly.
that's kind of like what you've been doing your entire entrepreneurial journey as well, is just keeping the blinders on. And over time, I guess, realizing even in your challenges and the times when you felt defeat, that
Hmm.
you were like, no, I can do this.
Yeah,
Eventually you came to that conclusion and you move forward. And I think
yeah,
that's the big deal, is about moving forward. So speaking of moving forward, how are you disrupting the industry? What are you doing to shake it up a bit?
yeah. So I've decided to do an online bakery, which is all online. There's no brick and mortar. But the other thing is, I do not take orders as they come.
Mm,
I only do two pre orders every month. So once in the beginning and once in the middle of the month. and then I'll bake them all the week after and send them out. So it's almost like the Supreme model. You know how they only have a limited number of items and they
Yeah.
like drop it on one day and then when it's gone, it's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing for me. So I drop a limited number of items on that pre-order date, and once it's gone, it's gone. I don't do any side orders because
Yeah.
again, right now it's just me. I'm hiring a couple folks in September, but this is for like my own sanity. um
Hey,
like
I think it's a great idea. It's kind of like it keeps the hype, and it keeps
mhm.
also that like, oh my gosh, the urgency is there also to get it done. And I think that's brilliant. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, even from a business perspective, right? Then I have money in my hands to go purchase ingredients,
yeah, yeah,
right? So, like, I know how much money that I have. I'm not wasting money on ingredients. Say I bought like enough ingredients for 600 cakes, but I only sold 300 or something.
yeah,
I just wasted ingredients, right? So this
yeah,
way I'm not losing money really in any aspect. I get a cash inflow to help pay for overhead, but then I'm
hmm
also not utilizing more overhead than I need.
yeah. That's also like that's brilliant on a business perspective as well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. I have yet to order something, but I had all hopes and desires of creating a one of your recipes prior to this interview, and I was going to then serve it to everybody, and that did not happen. That did not happen as much as I wanted to do that. But hopefully, I will be redoing one of your recipes sooner than later. So
Yes.
post it, and I'll tag you on it.
Please
So just
do.
some quick fun facts about yourself. So if you had
Mhm.
a favorite book or a magazine, which one is it?
Ella Enchanted or Pride and Prejudice, either or, my
Yeah,
favorite books.
yeah.
I'm a sucker for Jane Austen.
Oh yeah.
It's really bad. I made Root take me to Bath in England because that's where she lived when she wrote Emma.
Oh wow.
And then, yeah, it's an obsession. When I was pregnant, Root took me to go see Emma in like a theatrical play type of situation.
Oh nice. That's
It's
so
always been
sweet.
a favorite. And then Ella Enchanted it's a like a young adult, like a kid's novel.
I'd seen the movie, I think.
The movie is nothing like the book. Ugh, it was a travesty. I was so excited, and I'm like, what is this? Why is there an evil uncle? I'm so confused. Who are these people?
Yeah.
The book is just so much better. I remember that it was the first book that actually made me cry. Like I
Oh
remember being so engrossed in it
yeah, yeah.
that I didn't want it to end.
Oh no.
And I was like maybe in like I don't know, I was very young when the book came out, but it began a very long I like speed read, so I go through a novel fairly quickly.
Oh wow.
I have like Kindle Unlimited and
Yeah,
I read maybe one book a week, if not more. Like it's my ritual. I read before I
yeah.
sleep.
That's excellent. I love reading, and there was a time period where I just could not read anymore. I was just so busy with other stuff. And then I bought the Kindle some years ago, and it was like the best gift I ever gifted myself because I was able to Kindle my reading again. And so,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
the best.
I know. So tell me, what is your favorite blog or Instagram to follow for fun?
There's so many.
Aside from your own blog, Milk and Cardamom.
Okay, I really, really enjoy reading. God, there's so many. Okay, so from the desi side, I like The Familiar Kitchen. I
Mm,
love the way she writes. She's just so poetic and just so, I wish I had the grace and like vocabulary and ability to tell a story the way Anne does.
hmm
And it's just so, she's such a great writer. There's another one, it's called Broke Bitch Meals, which is my friend Casey. She's another just fabulous writer. And then basically recipe wise, I like Chutney Life,
Yeah.
Jewlicious, Chocolate and Cheese Please, sometimes for fashion, just because I'm not the most fashionable human being at all. I'm like Uniqlo and like Gap. That's like as like fancy as I get. I remember I posted something once and someone's like, "Where'd you get your boots?" And I'm like, "Costco." I was like in Tahoe and I needed snowshoes, so
That's
we're
not
like,
bad though. I mean, come on.
I'm like, I was in Tahoe and I needed snowshoes, so I just bought the cheapest ones I could
That's so
find,
funny.
and they just
Did
happened
you
to be
link
in
it?
Costco.
Did you link the Costco?
Oh my God. I was like, I'm not that person. But yeah, I am like an avid blog reader too. Yeah, for sure.
I love that. What are some of your favorite business tools or resources?
Ooh. Asana.
Yeah, I
I
use that
love
too.
Asana. I use the crap out of Asana. I use it for everything. Because I break it down. I have different boards for like my sponsored posts and then sponsor posts that my daughter's in, because any money that I get from a post that like I wouldn't have gotten without her, that money goes to Ilara. I don't keep
Oh,
it.
I love it. Yeah.
We have like a setup blend. She's an employee of my business actually.
Oh, I love that.
And she makes an income. So at the end of the year, I like calculate how many hours she was on. So I'll go through, see how many stories she was in, convert that to hours, give her an hourly rate,
Oh,
and pay
wow.
her that.
That's incredible.
Um,
What a great idea. I don't know if a lot of people do this, but this is a great idea.
yeah, it's also a good tax thing for you and her, right? Because I
Hmm.
get a tax rate because she's an employee, but also she gets
Hmm.
a 401k. I could put
Hmm.
money in a 401k for her now.
Yeah.
So she'll be set. But yeah, I remember the IRS emailed us last year, and like they mailed us, and they're like, "She's 3 years old," and we're like, "Yes, we know she's still an employee."
That's so funny. You're like, have you seen my post? Clearly do not follow me on Instagram.
Yeah. So I think when people sometimes when I like talk to brands or like people who want to sponsor something that's like a kids thing, I very much negotiate much harder than I normally would. And sometimes they don't understand that. And then when I tell them like any money I make from this goes to my daughter, they usually are very quick to be like, okay,
Yeah, but it's so brilliant. The idea is so brilliant. So,
yeah, that is my Asana. I have my sponsored. Then I have all my photography
yeah.
boards. I have all of that set up there. I also use an app it's a Gmail app called Sorted,
Oh,
which like I'm one of those people that like I'll go through my email and then like not have the time to respond properly. So this thing, what you can do is open an email and then has like, add to tomorrow's to-do list, add to today's to-do list, or remind me in a couple of days. And what it'll do is it'll either put it on your to-do list or it'll resend it to you so that it shows up at the top of your inbox in a couple of days if you haven't responded. Like it automatically knows that you didn't respond.
I love that. I kind of need that,
Yeah.
I think. Sorted.
Yeah. SORTD.
I'm going to
It's
actually put all the links to these resources as well in the show notes.
Yeah,
So,
it's really good. Yeah, those two are probably and Shopify.
yeah. Well, that's awesome. I just had such a great time talking to you. I feel like we can keep chatting for hours
Yes.
and have like a part two at another time. But whoever's listening today, how can they reach you? How can they find you? How
Yeah.
can they follow you?
Yeah. So you can DM me at Milk and Cardamom on Instagram. I'm probably the most responsive there. But you can follow my blog at milkandcardamom.com. You can find out the date of my next presale on my website at milkandcardamomsweets.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I've just been really happy. So thank you.
Oh,
I loved
yay.
hearing your story and I loved getting so much gems of great advice from you as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining Law Chat with Girija. I love these kind of stories and conversations where we can be real, honest, and open, and having fun at the same time. I hope you are inspired and motivated to keep doing the amazing work you are doing. If this is something that gave you all those feels and then some, truly motivated and inspired for you, you can show your love in all or one of these ways. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and share this video with your community and tell them about it, or share with somebody that can benefit from it. I look forward to seeing you next time on another episode of Law Chat, and until then, keep moving forward. Bye.